use of their limbs. There's no question in my mind that sensory neural and sensory motor interaction with computer-based electronics is absolutely going to happen. The next step after that is that we might as well give people supra-normal capabilities. They should be able to hear to 40,000 cycles per second instead of 20. They should be able to see in various frequencies. I mean, you know, the Superman with his X-ray vision, you could actually do that with an implant.
All right, fantastic.
Okay. There's a freedom question,
yeah,
and there was the one in the middle. Let me do the freedom question, and we'll come back to the middle one. So, were you asking about my view of freedom of expression on the network and whether we're trying to preserve that? And can she have the microphone back for just a second?
There are two sides to that. I was asking your opinion on his idea of information freedom, and I was asking your opinion on how he does it. Okay.
So, first of all, to come back to an earlier comment about having access to information freely, I think is super important. It doesn't mean that information is always free. I mean, sometimes we have to pay for information, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in the world I live in, one of the most important ideas is not to assume that everyone who creates information wants to be paid for it, because they don't. Some people create that information just for the sheer joy of knowing that somebody else could use that information. That's why all the information on the World Wide Web just exploded, because millions of people said, I know something that other people don't, I'd love to share that with them. So that kind of information freedom I'm a big fan of. I also accept that some people say, I've just spent $100 million to make this great movie, and please, I'd like to make some money back to, you know, and that's okay too. What I don't like, though, is the view that because someone has created information that they should be jammed into this particular copyright straitjacket because they don't necessarily want to be there, which is why one of my colleagues, not at Google, but in the academic community, invented something called Creative Commons, which is a full spectrum choice of what to do when you create content. It could be strict copyright, or it could be public domain, or it could be something in between. It's free to the academic world, it's not free to the commercial world, all kinds of things. Okay, so that's where I stand on information freedom. Let's figure out what it was exactly you were asking.
So I read recently that Google is developing a Linux-based operating system for heavy internet users.
Yes, okay.
So what actually the limitations do the present OS has that motivated Google?
Right. Okay. So the first answer is that every operating system has its limitations, right? So we have Android, we have Chrome OS, and we have the Chrome browser. Those are open source. Why are they open source? Well, first of all, we wanted to remove barriers to people being able to get access to an operating system if they needed one. People who make these things needed an operating system, and instead of charging them for it, we wanted to give them a platform on which they could build new ideas. So there's plenty still to be done to the internet, to these operating systems, and to applications. You have a career ahead of you to do some really cool stuff.
So do that Google OS coming to be?
Okay, let me get some other people in. One or two more questions, and I want to really turn more and more to the future. So the gentleman here.
The really interesting thing that recent I/O keynote introduced was the Project Glass.
Yes.
When do you think the Project Glass, even prototypes, would be available in India for the developers to see, to develop, to do anything? Even the emulators are not available, right?
So,
and by the way, I got a chance to actually try that out in Davos.
Really? Oh, that's great. Okay.
I've actually used it, and
yes. Were you able to see clearly?
I was able to take pictures. I said, you know, say phone, take picture, and it took pictures, which was interesting.
Click. I think if you read the January issue of IEEE Spectrum, I think I have this right, there's an article in there by someone who built their own Google Glass. Now, it turned out it wasn't quite as compact as the one that Google was working on, but it was an experiment to see, taking existing technology, what you could do. I honestly don't know what the plans are for commercialization and release. I sure as heck hope that it happens sometime this year, to be honest with you. And I also don't know about export mechanisms, but you shouldn't let that stop you from exploring possibilities. Either speculate about what you can do with something that has a camera, a microphone, and a projector that you can see. one of the things that was in TED there is called Sixth Sense, and it came out of MIT. You remember this? It was a little clumsy. The guy has this thing hanging around his neck with a projector coming out on one end.